So it sounds to me like there's maybe not as much of a transferable skill between like a professional public speaker in order as there is like somebody who's good at one-on-one communicating and sitting and talking.
Um, well, I would say that I think there's overlap in the sense that when you're talking from a persuasion perspective, people are often persuaded for similar aspects. So you are persuaded when someone believes who you are. You've got credibility that people know you got, this degree, this certification. You deserve to be up there for some reason. They trust you. I'm going to believe you. Number two, they believe you because you make a logical argument. I mean, you have what you're saying actually makes sense, and you're not just doing this way and that. And then number three is that you are able to incite their passions, their emotions. That's the pathos that you can tell stories that identify with the other person. So that identification aspect is present in all three of those. So those things are both uh, applicable in a large environment as well as they are in an interpersonal environment. The interpersonal is just more intimate, and there's a difference, I think, in a mass psychology between like a group being persuaded versus like another individual being persuaded. I think at the individual level, people are a little bit more critical than they are to just jump in on the group. So that bandwagon effect and, group psychology and mob psychology, people are easily able to get persuaded when they're in a mob. And if they're by themselves, they will probably go, well, I don't know if this is a good thing. You know what I mean? But
Hmm.
like the pressure, the social pressure and everything that goes with the mob or with a group is very powerful. In fact, propaganda is really geared towards the mob and mass. So it's difficult to voice propaganda upon an individual in a one-on-one because I think they have a more critical lens into it, but not always.
Do people need to be clear of the difference between persuasion and manipulation?
Well, they're similar. They're similar, and I think that's where I think being a good critical thinker is so powerful because there's a fine line, an ethical line between persuasion and manipulation. Persuasion, I think, and I don't know how you draw that line other than from a motivation perspective. And that's usually the motivation on behalf of the communicator. A good manipulator will use all of the psychological tactics to get what they want. A persuasion aspect is to say, I'm going to try to convince you that this is the right way without using other psychological manipulation tactics on top of it. And so, like, you know, passive aggressive manipulation tactics, um, retracting yourself from someone, making yourself available to someone, that back and forth and intimacy is a manipulation tactic. And so it's very difficult. And that's why I think as a listener, you just got to have your brain on, and I don't know. This is where I would say, skeptic philosophy, skepticism is good because people will tell you everything, and just go still look on your social media feed, right? Everybody out there is supposedly an expert. And
Yeah.
I don't know how many people, maybe you've experienced it, but like how many people have run, $10 million businesses out there? I'm like, it seems like everybody and their brother is operating $100 million business. I'm like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you're like, these people, you got to kind of have a critical thinking, like, because if you just believe what everybody tells you, you're easily manipulated. People are going to manipulate you. People are going to communicate. They're going to do everything they can to get what they want from you.
Yeah.
So you have to just kind of be aware of that and just be a little bit skeptical. So it's difficult.
Yeah. I mean, when I think of persuasion versus manipulation, I think of like persuading somebody means like, hey, this is going to benefit you too. Like this is the right way in my opinion, versus manipulation is like this benefits me at the detriment of you is kind of how I think about that. At least that's my take. And if somebody sitting here listening to this is like, I'm never going to be persuaded. I'm never going to be manipulated. That's also not good because it kind of sets you in your stone of like, I'm not going to listen to anything that would persuade me out of my thing out of my set opinion at the risk of being manipulated, even if the other way of thinking about things is maybe better.
Yeah, I mean, we can't be naive to think that we will never be persuaded or manipulated because we're all wearing clothes and we're all wearing brands and we all drive certain cars and we all have different types of computers and Apples and iPhones and all of those things. And to think that we made those decisions as a free will without any type of marketing or advertising or manipulation or social pressure, which is a form of manipulation and persuasion. In fact, Aristotle's definition of rhetoric is the most effective means of persuasion in any given situation. Social pressure is one. In some cases, some people might even say violence or force is an aspect of rhetoric because you are, you know, threats of violence, they're persuasive,
Yeah.
right? So those are unethical, but like everybody is persuaded, nobody buys something, it's kind of funny to me to see people that think, oh, I'm independent and I'm like a rebel. Not to realize like there's a whole line of clothing that's been put together by multi-million dollar brands to the rebel. And that's what you're buying.